and welcome back. I hope you are well. Today I am preparing for my trip abroad. I'm going on a 3-week trip starting next week, and I'm deciding on the art supplies I'm taking with me. I'm not taking all of this with me, I'm just getting things out to decide what I want to take. I'm also preparing my watercolour palette, which is why I have my box of watercolours here. These are all of the watercolours that I own. So I'll be going through those in a minute because I'm going to be refilling this palette. This is the palette I'm taking with me. It is a micro portable painter and I have a little Final Fantasy sticker on there. And it's really convenient because it's super compact, but it still has 6 half pans of watercolour in it. And I already use this on a frequent basis, so I already have 6 colours in here, and I'm going to clean them of contamination and then refill them because some of them are getting quite low. So that's on the agenda for today. And then I am going to look through the papers and sketchbooks that I have and decide on what I want to take with me. And I want a pretty compact, knocking you there, a pretty compact setup, but I want to be able to do a few different kinds of mediums as well. So I'm currently deciding on my options. These aren't the only sketchbooks I have, but these are contenders. I do have an A5 size of the art creation as well as an option. So we will see how that goes. I'm going to start off first though by cleaning and refilling this palette. So I have here my watercolour box where I store all my watercolours, and I am going to try and find the colours that are currently in my micro palette. So I have Sennelier Phthalo Turquoise, Indanthrone Blue, Rose Madder Lake, Red Brown, or Brown Red. I always say red brown, but it's brown red. And then I believe the orange is this one here, red orange, but I'll check before I refill it that it is. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What am I missing? Ah, here we are, Yellow Lake, which is my preferred mixing yellow. And I believe that's all of the colours. My ultramarine and burnt sienna are going to be in a little pot that I use that you might have seen on other videos before, which I have to mix greys and also do warm and cool tone painting. So they're going to be in a separate, these two will be in a separate palette. I don't need both of them twice. So I am able to get Indanthrone Blue and things like that instead in the micro palette. I'll move this aside. So this is the micro palette. I'm not super sure about everything I'm taking with me yet, but I do know that I am taking this. I'm pretty set on the materials I'm taking now. It's mainly the sketchbook and paper that I'm not super sure about, but I'm going to leave the mixing areas like this for now. I don't mind a messy mixing area space because I usually end up using these colours anyway. And I need to grab a water brush because I'm going to clean the pans now. So I have a cloth and a water brush, and all I'm going to do is just wet the surface and try and just take off any contamination. I'm not super bothered about it being particularly contaminated. Because I don't tend to use the whole surface for picking up pure colour. I usually have like a little area in each pan that's for picking up pure colour and then the rest is for mixing. But try and get the worst clean. Yellow is by far the worst for cleaning. It gets contaminated so easily and visibly, which I suppose in a way is better that it's very visible. It's easier to see that there's contamination. Squeeze some more water out. I might just try and clean up this one a little bit more, and then we should be good. The best I can, anyway. You can still see a little bit of green on either side, but I think that's the best we can do for now. So I don't have much of this yellow left now. I do have a replacement tube ready that's larger than this one. The 21mm, which is what I tend to buy my most used colours in, this size, isn't usually in stock for this colour. It's quite difficult to get the large size of this colour. So I've been able to get I think it's a 15. No, not 15. I had to get another 10, I think, because they only do the 10 and the 21, I think. I'm not super sure off the top of my head. But I would prefer to get a big one of this if I can at some point. I've had this one for a few years now. I'm getting good use out of it. PV19 Rose. Whoa, there we go. PV19 Rose is my preferred cool red for mixing pinks and purples. And Indanthrone Blue is one of my favourite blues. It's a really, really moody blue, so it's not useful for every instance where you need a blue. I do still think that ultramarine is the best for me for like general warm blue mixing. But I love Indanthrone Blue. I really want to try the Graham Indanthrone Blue at some point, because I've heard that it's a lot more blue than this one. This one's a bit more muted. And then I have the red orange. And there we go. It's a very liquid paint I've found with the Mission Gold. They come out very, very liquid. compared to, like, look at those two. That one's almost flattened out, and then that one's still keeping its shape. So if you've done much watercolour or you're quite into your pigments, you might notice that there's some slightly unconventional colours in here. There's some conventional ones, like these two are quite common as mixing colours, but the premise of this palette is that most of them, bar this one, are transparent. I wanted to make a transparent, limited mixing set. I'm having to really squeeze this one out. It's quite difficult to get a completely transparent warm red, I found. That also isn't toxic, because I try and avoid toxic pigments, specifically the really, really toxic ones like cadmium, though those tend to be more opaque. But yeah, I've had trouble finding a really, really nice, permanent, light fast, warm red. This is semi-transparent, so it's not quite as transparent as these, but still quite transparent. And one reason why transparency is important for me is because I tend to use watercolour at the top of ink lines. And if you do all of the ink line art first and then you put opaque colours on top of it, it ends up making all of the line art muddy, and it doesn't look that nice. At least in my opinion anyway, but I'll leave these now out of the way to dry. And I'm going to be going away in a week, so giving them a week to dry is extra safe. Because I want to make sure that they are thoroughly dry for when I take them through airport security, because they'll be going through my carry-on bag. That's one really nice thing about watercolours, is being able to take pans of them through airport security without having to take the tubes through in your liquids bag. Like you would with, say, gouache. So these now go back in here. So one thing I'm currently deciding on is what sketchbook or sketchbooks or papers I'm taking with me, because I'm trying to balance taking a very compact and light kit for flying abroad with also having variety for a 3-week period. And I was originally thinking of just taking this, and I've decided against just taking this now because of a couple things, but mainly because it's soft cover, and I am mainly going to be sketching in my lap, and I'm not gonna have a desk to rest it against that often. But this may end up coming with me, as you'll see in a moment. What I've decided on bringing instead is an art creation, of course. So this is a Royal Talens art creation, and this is the colour Fresh Mint, and I've already put a sticker on it ready for it to be used, and it's currently blank, but it's ready to go. And if any of you recognise this sticker, you'll know why it's very appropriate for a travelling sketchbook. And I would honestly be quite happy just taking this, because it's got really nice sketching paper for dry media, and it's a nice balance for me for being cheap enough that I'm not afraid to use it and do tons and tons of sketches, but it's also nice enough to take materials and a few different kinds of materials as well. But the thing is, it's not the best to use with watercolour. You can use light washes. It's also cream coloured paper, which is fine for me when it comes to sketching. But for if I want to do any watercolour or anything like that, I'm not super sure. But just this is a good idea for a 3-week trip. So I've been deciding between these two options. Oh, there's 3 options technically. The first option is that I only take this and I suck it up. Or I take a couple blocks of watercolour paper, and I have a block I've nearly used up here. There's only 3 sheets left in it, and this is cold press, and this is the same, but this is hot press, and it has 8 sheets left. So this is 8 and this has 3, and these are a nice size because once I'm done I can just stick them into my sketchbook if I want to. So this is an option, and it would also mean that then I would have 100% cotton paper for watercolour if I wanted to. And they're quite light and not too bulky, so that's an option. The other option is that I bring 2 sketchbooks. I bring this one, which will be my general sketching sketchbook, and then I either bring this one with me, so I have 2 A5 sketchbooks, or I bring this one with me, which is an alpha. So that's an epsilon, this is an alpha. They're the same colour, same weight, it's just that this one's a bit rougher. But this is a 4 by 6 inches hardbound. So the good thing about this is, because it's hardbound, it has more resistance for me to be able to draw and paint while stood up or sat down. Or I can take the epsilon with me. Now, one thing I'm thinking about with this is, do I want to have 2 sketchbooks? Because if I'm spreading out the trip across 2 sketchbooks, I'm not likely going to have the whole experience in one place, like I might with just taking this and loose sheets of paper that I can stick into this. So does it bother me? One of the questions I'm asking myself is, does it bother me having all of my sketches spread across 2 books? The other thing is it going to be too bulky taking 2 sketchbooks versus taking 1 sketchbook and some loose sheets of paper? Because I could also take a little A5 envelope and just put those 2 watercolour blocks in, these 2. And also some loose sheets of cut down paper. I even have some sheets of epsilon paper that I could cut to size. And I just take a little A5 folder of these and some sheets and then stick them in as I go. That's something to consider. I'm not super sure. I do like the idea of having everything in one sketchbook. And I do definitely prefer the idea of taking a sketchbook that I am going to work more in for sketching, but then what if I want to do painting? What if I want to do illustrations that I can't necessarily do on this paper? I'm having to think about it. So this is what I'm currently struggle bussing with. Like, materials took a while, but managed to get that down to 1 pencil case now, small pencil case. But this is the real struggle, and we'll see what I end up choosing in the end.